Hello and welcome everybody to the Standards Committee meeting. So the first item on the agenda is going to be the appointment of the Vice Chairman. So would anybody have a proposer for any nominations for Vice Chairman?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Townsend, please.
Thank you. And could we have a seconder, please? Then I will second.
I was going to say I've missed the vote, but otherwise I'll second that.
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor Clements. And that, so please could we have a show of hands to indicate whether you support the appointment of Councillor Townsend as Vice Chairman. So could we start with 4, please? Show of hands with 4. Thank you. And for against, and any abstentions? Thank you. 1 abstention. Thank you very much. So then that motion is carried. Thank you very much. So welcome to Councillor Townsend, Vice Chair. Thank you very much. So then moving on to the next item on the agenda, that's the co-option of the town parish councillors. So as per paragraph 7.1.1 of the Constitution, the Standards Committee has a maximum of 3 town or parish councillors co-opted onto the committee. So these are non-voting members, and the positions were advertised to all parish councils, and councillors Ian Hunt, Pat Furness and Jeff Kenyon have been successful. So the councillors need to be formally co-opted onto the committee. So could we have a proposer for these 3 councillors to be co-opted onto this committee? Could anyone be a proposer for that? Thank you very much. Thank you. And could we have a seconder? Thank you. I can't see everybody's names. I apologise. Thank you. That's a prize. White. Thank you very much. So please can we have a show of hands to indicate whether you support the co-option of councillors Ian Hunt, Pat Furness and Jeff Kenyon to the Standards Committee. So everybody for, looking good. Thank you. Anybody against? And any abstentions? Thank you very much. And then that motion is carried. Thank you. So welcome to the committee.
Can I ask a question about
Yeah.
the co-opted? Were the were details sent out to just parish councils or town councils as well? Because as far as I'm getting this second and third hand, but I have no people on Hertford and Bishop Stortford town councils who weren't aware about it.
Oh, I mean, I'll defer to my Democratic Services Officer's colleague who actually sent it out, but it would have gone to all, unless I'm told differently, it would have gone to all councils.
Thank you very much and welcome to the Standards Committee. So just coming on to the chairman's announcements, I'd just like to remind everyone that this is being webcast. So when you do speak, please could use the microphones just so that everybody can hear online. And just very quickly just say welcome to everybody to our first standards meeting of this committee. So that's what I wanted to say really. So do we have any apologies for absence?
Haven't received any apologies for absence, Chair.
Thank you very much. So moving on to item 5 of the agenda, that is for the minutes of the meeting of the 5th of January 2023. So you've already been sent the minutes, and we have before us the minutes of the committee meeting held on the 5th of January. Councillor Hunt did propose some amendments to these minutes. So on page 434 of the minutes, page 4 of the agenda pack, Councillor Hunt's name is missing from the list of attendees. On page 440 of the minutes, and that's page 10 of the agenda pack, paragraph 1, there was a misspelling and it was BENE and that should have been Bean. Page 441 of the minutes, and that's on page 11. Paragraph 1, again another typo of the word complaint. So it's complainant and should have been complaint. So I'm aware that as we are quite a new committee, a lot of people will not have been here for that previous meeting on the 5th of January. I have watched it on the webcast, so I am happy to say that these minutes are a true reflection of what took place during that meeting. And oh, I'm very sorry.
Not-
Yes,
not at all, it's
I
fine.
do apologise.
Not
We've
at
got
all.
a few more, and then
Just a
haven't
very,
you?
very small one
Sorry.
that I mentioned. It's page 437, and it's paragraph 3, line 2. After the word where it says misunderstanding, was councillors behaving in ways that members of the public. I'm suggesting that because, to make it absolutely clear, that was the point I was making, that people may misunderstand, members of the public might misunderstand. So rather than the word they, substitute that for, I'll give it to you, it's members of the public. And the final line that says something connected to the council, the point I was making there is something not connected to the council. I was drawing the distinction between people misunderstanding the meaning of incapacity. Okay, those are the points I wanted to suggest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, so that's having looked at the webcast on the 5th of January, I would be happy to say that they are a reflection of the meeting. And I know another councillor, so you,
Yes, it was myself, the only person at the meeting.
yes, so would you be
So-
happy?
With the amendments we've heard this evening, I'm happy to second them.
Thank you very much. So could we have show of hands for all happy to go ahead with those? Thank you. Any against? Though it's tricky if you weren't there. And any abstentions? Okay, so you're abstaining. Okay, thank you. So if you're we will say then that that is carried, that they are a reflection of that meeting. Thank you very much. So item 6, are there any? Oh, okay. Okay, so we don't need to do item 6. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the declarations of interest. Sorry. So item 6, the declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you very much. So moving on to item 7, which is the standards update. And that is going to be given to us by James Ellis, Head of Legal and Democratic Services, Monitoring Officer. He is present and present the report to us.
Thank you, Chairman. To all new members, this will become a regular feature that you will see coming before this council. This is just an update of the complaints that I, as the monitoring officer, have received in the time between the last meeting and today's meeting. These cover complaints coming from both concerning district councillors and parish and town councillors as well. You'll see in the report that this is part of the terms of reference for the Standards Committee to promote and maintain high standards of conduct for members and cooperative members of the council, and to receive reports from the monitoring officer and assess the operation and effectiveness of members' code of conduct. You will see in the table, which is contained at paragraph 2.4, that since the last meeting of this committee, which was held on the 5th of January 2023, there have been a total of 6 complaints. Well, that's not necessarily true, because the first 2 were reported back in January, but they were not concluded at that point. There is an element of confidentiality around who the councillors are, because it's not fair to name them where they've not gone any further or where they've been resolved elsewhere. That's why they are a little bit vague as to which parish councillors and which town councils are involved. You will see in the 3rd column how whether there was any case to answer, and where there was, how those were kind of resolved at the time. there is a need for myself to consult the independent person whenever we get a complaint. So all of these complaints that are listed here will have been consulted between myself and the independent person and come to a conclusion that we were both in agreement on. The purpose the reason that this comes before this committee is so that you have it's within your mind and your cognizance of the level of complaints that are experienced across East Herts. I think not to report it to you would perhaps give you a false sense of what's going on in the district, and it's good that you can get used to the amount of complaints that naturally happen over a period of time. And if there were, for some reason, an explosion of complaints at any one point, you would be right to question me as to why that was, or whether there was something that we needed to do to better address those. But you will no doubt get a feel for how many complaints there are from period to period. There's nothing other than for you to note the report and to provide any observations that you've got from what you've kind of seen in that report. You can I'm happy to answer any questions you've got. I will also provide the independent person with an opportunity to say anything that he may wish to say about this report as well. But other than that, I've got nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, James. Does anyone have a comment or would like to ask any question about the report? Yeah, thank you, Councillor.
It's a question really I'd like answered. And when a person who's found in breach of the code, if you like, and a letter of apology is found to be the right answer, do you, as the monitoring officer, have a confirmation that letter's been sent? Are they always sent via you, in other words? Thank you.
So with a letter of complaint, what I will normally do is I will ask the complainant and the member involved whether they're happy to consult with each other directly. It might not be appropriate for them to speak to each other directly if there's a bit of bad blood or whatever it might be. So I will offer to be a go-between, if you like, and sort of receive the email or the letter and then pass it on. Even in a situation where I wasn't the go-between, I would seek confirmation that such a letter had been received by the complainant, and where a letter was promised but not delivered, I would follow that up to make sure that one did go out eventually.
Thank you, James. Are there any other comments or questions regarding the report?
Mostly just a question. I think quite a lot of us are certainly new to the committee. I wonder if you could kind of just expand a little bit on, is this a fairly normal amount of load? Is there anything kind of unusual about this? How much work goes into, how much of your time goes into dealing with these complaints?
Yeah, certainly, Councillor Clements. I'm happy to blow my own trumpet as to how hard I work on these complaints. A lot of time does go into them. Even what might be considered a fairly trivial complaint involves a lot of time. It involves speaking to the complainant to get a true understanding of what it is that they're complaining about and how that relates to the code of conduct itself. We'll then go out to the council themselves that's been complained of and sort of relay the complaint to them and get their views on it. If there are any witnesses that have sort of been involved in it who may be able to contribute to the veracity or otherwise of what the complaint is, then we'll reach out to them and speak to them as well. If any further information sort of comes out from what the councillor has said, we'll need to investigate those, and then I will have a meeting with the independent person. We'll go over all of the evidence that has been gathered and have a discussion as to how that, well, whether it links to the code of conduct or not, and then form a conclusion, which I then need to relay to both sides. So they can be quite lengthy. Some have been very, very detailed. Some complaints will range over sort of 6 or 7 or 8 sort of different things that have happened over a period of time. So each and every one of those will need to be looked into. So they are quite lengthy. How much did I say? There was 6 that you've got fed in. I would say is probably a little bit below what you would normally see. I think normally you'd see probably a couple more, maybe sort of 7, 8 sort of area. You will see some that say no breach found. There will be some that are completely not something that we would look into, but obviously we can't draw that, we can't come to that conclusion until we've done all the groundwork. So, you know, we can't dismiss out of hand. So someone will make a complaint and we will need to look into it, but, you know, eventually you'll come to the conclusion there's absolutely nothing there. So it's not to say that just because there is a high number of complaints that something's going wrong. It just means that a lot of complaints do come in for different things and we have to look into them. So I think this is probably slightly on the low end. And not complaining at all. Very happy that fewer complaints are coming in, but I wouldn't be surprised if you sort of come back for the next one that there might be one or two more kind of thing. Yeah, I don't think that, I don't know if the independent person got anything that he wishes to add.
Well, thanks. And I would endorse what James has said. They are very time consuming because you're always assessing them. People, members of the public, are perfectly entitled to complain. That's what they can do. But having got a complaint, it's a serious matter, because what you don't want to do is to find yourself going down a rabbit hole where you assume that the council has breached the code. You have to apply certain tests. The principal test is the incapacity, not incapacity in, i.e., that is to say, whether they're operating in the capacity as a councillor, which is what the law requires. And that actually isn't always as simple as it may seem. That requires often one complaint here I can think of required a lot of digging just to be clear the circumstances under which the complainant's assertions took place. And I think in the case, the person wasn't in capacity, and that was the end of the matter. So there's that point. And the other consideration, I think, also is, and again, people are perfectly entitled to do so, if members of the public are unhappy with a decision taken by a councillor, it isn't unknown for them to assert that the decision represented misconduct, but actually it was a decision they didn't agree with. Again, they're perfectly entitled not to agree, but the code of conduct isn't the route for pursuing their dissatisfaction. I think sometimes complaints arise where you do have to do some digging just to find out what actually is the complaint. Is it to do with conduct or is it a decision? So that's that. And of course, the other consideration that just is always in my mind with these things is that the code isn't intended to hobble councillors in the discharge of their duties. You were elected by your constituents to represent them, take decisions on their behalf, and sometimes say things they don't agree with. That is your job. If they don't like that, they don't elect you next time. That isn't automatically, though, a conduct matter. That's your job as a councillor to do what you're elected to do. And the role of the code is to make certain that as you do it, you are behaving in a way that is consistent with your obligations to behave in a decent, proper manner. Not to be contentious, but to be contentious in a way, if you're being contentious, that doesn't breach the code. And it's a fine balance, which, as James has just said, is time consuming, but important. Thank you.
Thank you. James, Nicholas, thank you very much. Are there any further comments, questions? Oh, Townsend.
Thank you. Yes, generally, I was wondering if you could give a very brief review for the benefit of all that are not going to be completely familiar as to the process required to notify or add something into the agenda for this meeting, and whether how that is tested prior to submission.
Yeah, happy to. If there's anything that you feel should come before this committee, or if there's anything within the current complaints handling procedure or anything else that you may have seen that is connected to standards, then if you can let me know with plenty of time, I can work alongside members of this committee to put that into a form of a report similar to what you've seen today. And we can bring that to this committee for discussion at that point. So if you let me know and possibly copy in Democratic Services, we can consider what that matter is and see if this is the correct place for it. And if it is, we can progress that together.
Could I just ask, in addition to that, the timescales to be emphasised, because I know you're often challenged with things being submitted almost too late for a meeting, and that causes confusion, delay, panic, etc. And that's for some guidance would be preferred.
Yeah, of course. So the statutory timeline, deadline for putting in a report is the same as with all other committees, which is they need to be published 5 clear days before the date of the meeting. But of course, there needs to be lead in time for that, for the report to be prepared and to go through the other stages that they need to go through. So I would probably ask that you let me know as soon as possible, and probably no later than, say, 3 weeks beforehand, possibly, depending on how big the item is. If it's a big item, then give me a bit more time than that. If it's this kind of report, that's quite light touch, then probably actually thinking about it, if it's something that needs to go to leadership team, you're probably best off giving me 4 weeks, because they only happen every 2 weeks. So I would say about a month in advance. This committee, though, only sits obviously twice a year, once in January, once in July. So if it is something that you need to be heard at a particular meeting, let me know with plenty of time. Otherwise, you will miss the boat until the next meeting, which is 6 months away.
Thank you very much.
And Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. Just to follow from last meeting, actually. On page 437, the second paragraph down, you said that you would send the new procedure across to all parish clerks to make them aware that the procedure would encourage complainants to resolve at a local level before being considered by the monitoring officer. Did that happen? Were all parish clerks advised of the new procedure?
So thank you for that, Councillor Hunt. You've caught me. I don't think it actually has gone out to all members yet. I will make sure that happens this week. You're referring to for the rest of the committee. At the last meeting of this committee in January of this year, the newly adopted complaints handling procedure has an additional step in it that requires parish and town complaints to try and be resolved at the local level before they come forward to the monitoring officer. Going back to what I said a moment ago about how time consuming a lot of these complaints are, it would help a lot if that local conversation took place, at least to begin with, to see if a resolution could be found at that level. But you're quite right that was meant to go out to all clerks. I don't think it actually has. I will make sure that happens this week. And if it isn't, feel free to pull me up on it at the next meeting as well.
Are there any further questions or comments? Thank you very much. So there is one recommendation for this item, and that is detailed on page 12 of the agenda pack. So that recommendation is that the committee receive the report and provide any observations to the head of legal and democratic services and the monitoring officer. So could I have a proposer? We do this, lovely. Thank you, Councillor Townsend, and a seconder, please. Thank you very much. So could we have a show of hands for 4, please? Any against and any abstentions? Thank you very much. So that is carried. Thank you very much. So the final item, number 8, is there any urgent business? So there is no urgent business. And so that concludes tonight's meeting at 19:23. So thank you very much for everybody's time. And thank you very much to Nicholas, James and Michelle for being here as well.